Nerd on the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Nerd on the Podcast you didn't need, but you deserve, and where all levels of nerd are welcome. We all enjoy a great score and familiar song in our films and TV shows, but what is the thought process behind it? What does it take for it to be truly special? Today, we bring our own Will Newkirk for this episode of Nerds Explain the Film Industry with music editing. Before we do all that, let's get all that housekeeping. We are joined by Will, like I said in the intro. I'm Josh.
I'm Corey.
I'm Tom.
And this episode is, as always, brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation that is powered by Patreon. As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks, like you get bonus episodes that nobody else hears. You get early access to episodes like these, like this episode that you're watching. Whoa! You get access to secret channels in our super public Discord server, so check that out. At the same time, you are supporting us and upgrading our content and being the best that we can be. So check it out. It's a dope community to be a part of.
4 quarters, baby.
4 quarters. Nerdon.tv/Patreon, and check out that Discord. Nerdon.tv/Discord. A lot of fun peeps over there that have joined us via Twitch, and like it just keeps growing. It's in triple digits now.
Triple digits.
I can speak.
This is audible.
But yeah, and also shout out to Apogee, Odyssey, and Embody Audio. Audio. Check them out. That is the housekeeping. Let us get into this episode. And I kind of want to start us off because in the very first Nerds Explain that we did, we talked about post-production audio.
It's musical episode.
I was waiting for it. You let us down.
Sometimes I let people down.
Well, let's go on with this musical episode.
I talked about that in the post-production process, there should be, in like large productions, everything about the post-production has a team. There's Foley, there's dialogue editors, there's mixers, there's, everybody has a team, and there is a music editing team. That is their, because here's the thing. Every team has their nuances. Like what I've done most of the time in my career is I'm doing full posts. I'm doing all of it. And
I was going to say, no racial. You don't need to have everyone be ninjas and do every job.
Yeah. No.
Specialized teams, specialized people to do specialized
and
things.
Here's the thing, and we talked a little bit off mic before we were recording, like will have expertise in noticing very certain things that are happening with the music, because this is what he's doing every day.
Sure.
And
every day.
And the crossfade,
the rest of your life.
Noticing the difference between a crossfade or not, or whatever, or of like, for me, I focus on trailers. Like I'm like, oh, that was a weird stop down, or okay, they could have, that's a weird way to ring that out. Okay, interesting.
Stop down. I understood that reference.
So it's cool to get somebody that this is their specialty, because even though I do post-production and I have certifications and blah, 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 this is what you do.
You went to blah, blah, blah school?
I went to blah, blah, blah school.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this, because it's something that's like, I do music editing, but not to the level that you do. So
for sure. No, it's my pleasure being here. So thank you for having me.
Of course.
Yeah.
You're so tall.
I'm not that tall.
You're so tall compared to me right now.
You're so tall.
For those first joining us, Will's been on our show a couple of times, been in some of our videos on the YouTubes when we went to E3.
Yes, indeed.
AKA Junior Bacon. What is
Western Bacon Junior Cheeseburger?
Yeah, that was his nickname for a bit. But before we,
I still don't 100% understand how that came to be. But
I don't either, because we weren't there.
It's his love language, and I don't argue it.
It's not bad.
You got to respect everyone's love language.
Yeah.
Also, I like myself a little Western Bacon Cheeseburger.
It's my favorite one.
Who doesn't?
It's my favorite one.
But before let's get into it.
Well, I was gonna say, you might have heard him on episodes of Game of Thrones, also with our COVID. You were like our first correspondent.
Yeah. Yes,
you dropped
indeed.
some knowledge to us.
Yeah.
And now you're gonna be dropping more knowledge today for our listeners.
Less grim knowledge, hopefully.
That's true.
Well, let's start basic. What is a music editor? What do they do?
There's kind of 3 prongs to what a music editor will do. There's first the temping, which is pretty early on in post-production, where the movie or TV show will require temporary music, And so I'll kind of go through scores from other movies or TV shows and say, oh, this would fit perfectly for this scene, and throw it in. And then if the director approves of it, then we go on from there.
So that's why Clearwater is always in every Vietnam War sequence, right?
Yeah, you start to see. Yeah,
He just died inside just a little bit.
Am I wrong?
No.
I saw a slight roll of the eyes, and
yeah.
well, that means that you have, because I know that also in your day-to-day life, you were in a band, you were also a DJ or are a DJ, so it's like you have a natural feel to what you have to, I would assume, when you're temping, of like,
exactly,
this is, you're not gonna,
no, and the DJ kind of stuff actually really comes in handy specifically for the temping part of the process, because this is not going to be in the final film, so you can kind of just play with it and like loop something and then add like a reverb, riser, whatever it takes to kind of just give the feeling.
Sure.
Because then the composer later on will just take that sort of idea and then actually create original music.
I've definitely had the issue with editing where I've done that, put temp music, and then I fall in love with the temp music where it's at. It's a very dangerous job if you do it really well, but...
Yes, and that's a kind of colloquially referred to as temp love, and it can cause some real problems down the line.
Because like licensing might come up, and you're like,
oh man,
because even the directors will hear it. I've been in this situation where a client will hear it and they'll be like, we really like that temp music, and then it's like, here's the thing.
Yeah,
I will neither confirm nor deny that I had a back and forth email with Sufjan Stevens' agency about using a song once that I temporarily put in. It fell through, but it's fine.
Yeah, it's it definitely can be a risky thing, especially because then some directors will actually just try to straight up license that temp. Like, I like this so much that I don't want the composer to do this.
Oopie.
What goes through your mind when that happens? Are you like, cool,
I know we've kind of sidetracked.
You're like,
this,
that's a cool thing. I made a song, or is it like, oh god,
it's
a little bit of both.
A little bit of both for sure. Because on the one hand, that means I've done my job very well. On the other hand, it means like, well, great, this is gonna be the problem child of the of the music.
Great, I brought in legal.
Would you say that in your experience, is it what percentage or ratio is like you developing temp music with like tones and stuff like that, or finding a song that you're just putting in place?
I mean, it always is starting with existing music. So it's always, this came from, hopefully not something as recognizable as like Titanic or something, but it comes from somewhere, and then you chop it up, make it so that like, oh, this moment in the music where it has this sting, this like, big swell, I'm going to make sure that lands on this character, like seeing something important or whatever.
Sure.
Inception.
Making sure it swells at the right places. And,
yeah, exactly.
So sorry, we fell in love with temp love. The next two prongs.
The next two prongs are demoing, and then kind of a combo of mix and delivery. Demoing is when the composer is now brought on board and they're writing their original music and sending it in for approval. So the director, the producers will kind of give notes like, oh, I like this, but I think it needs to have less strings, or it needs to start later. And so you go through revisions, which, going back to the temp thing, you can start to notice that a lot of revisions might say, I wish this had the feeling from the temp. I wish this, gave us that feeling in this moment. And so
it's their first love. They're just heartbroken.
Yeah,
exactly. So hopefully they get past it.
Right.
Pulling back a little bit, just so that our listeners can get a little bit more acquainted with some of your works. Could you name off some of the works that you've done?
Yeah, you can find my name in the credits as the assistant music editor in Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Nice.
That was a very fun project. I was also the music editor on an episode of Siren. I don't know if you've seen it. It's on Freeform, which used to be ABC Family. And then I have a number of things that I'm not credited for, so I'm not sure if I should really reveal, but I'll just say a number of shows that you will probably have seen.
What streamer, if potential, could you just say?
Plenty of Netflix.
Okay.
All right.
Plenty of Netflix.
We'll leave it there.
Okay.
We'll leave
For
it
sure.
there. For sure.
I definitely want to know now. I definitely paywall.
This is where
Patreon 4 quarters.
The knowing Zoom would happen.
Yeah.
But no, so in those, where did you find? I mean, is it pretty much kind of like you find your groove with each show, each production, or is it sometimes in particular, the 2 shows or the 2 projects you worked on, like one was a little bit harder in the temping part, or one was more difficult in the demoing part?
Yeah, and also, like, at least in my experience, it's pretty rare to be involved in something from temping all the way to the end. Like, oftentimes there are music editors who really specialize in temping, and so that's just, they go from temp to temp to temp. And then other music editors are more like, they specialize in the mixing and the delivery aspect. So
even then, the one job that's 3-pronged could have specialized people for each one of those parts.
Exactly.
And are you typically on doing the full thing, or are you doing one part, or are you kind of interchangeable? You could do all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of necessary to be able to do any of those things as a music editor, because sometimes when you're already in the mix phase, there will be, we decided we want a cue here, and so then you're kind of going into the temping phase and just finding music that kind of fits here, and then sometimes they'll license a song, or you'll take some of the music the composer has already written and then kind of, chop it up and make it into something new, fit it somewhere. But yeah, for the most part, in what I've done, it's been the demoing and the mix and delivery phase.
All right. Now, as Josh mentioned, going from band to music editor, what did that journey look like? When was the day that you're like, this is something I think I would like to do?
Well, it kind of started with I started as an assistant to a composer, so not getting into music editing. But I kind of realized that writing music wasn't so much what I wanted to do. Like, kind of the same thing with writing words. Like, I enjoy the editing more than being the creative force that's, putting pen to paper. I'd rather be like, well, based on what I know about how things should feel, I think this change needs to be made. I feel that's just a better role for me. So I stopped trying to be a composer. And then I have several family members who are music editors, and kind of just started talking to them and seeing what their job is like. And it sounded like something I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So music has always kind of been in the blood.
Oh, yeah, definitely. For both sides of my family, it's actually how my parents met.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They met in a band, so.
His mom actually sang on my album.
For sure.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah,
Very,
she's a
very
good singer.
cool.
Are your parents still together?
No, they're not.
Okay, I was gonna say Josh. I was gonna say if she was, I was like Josh. She's a married woman. but no.
Not that you're a married man, just that she's.
Yeah. No, I mean,
forget you.
Yeah. I mean, whatever.
I'm just trying to protect Will. So I mean, was there? So you transitioned from writing music to assisting music, and then going into music editing.
Yeah.
Was there are there particular films or shows that have just like they're like, oh, this is how they should be. This is how a good edit is done, or
or at least stand out to you in that regard.
I mean, I like to think that on the music side of things, it's best when you aren't really noticing it, when you're not paying attention to that. I mean, for someone like me, just because of the necessity of the job, I do always pay attention to music in anything I watch. But for the viewers, I think they should not be thinking like, oh, the music here, that was a really clean blah, blah, blah. It should just be, that worked. That was a good movie.
Yeah, it's the cliche of if you're doing your job right, no one will notice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I respect that.
Was there a score that got you to like, oh, I want to compose?
I really liked Social Network back when that came out. Just kind of understated, and
the walking. I think to me, like just that opening scene with him walking back to his dorm, and then you hear it, and you're like, oh,
for sure. No, I'm a sucker for people who do sound design and aren't just writing music that then gets played by an orchestra. I really like, kind of the same reason why I like electronic music. I really enjoy the sonic landscape more than the actual melodies.
Interesting.
I want to dive into that a little bit, because I feel like, just like with directors and celebrity directors now, it's always like, oh my God, like, let's say Dune. That's a great movie, blah blah. And everyone's like, didn't even know. But it's like it takes a village. It takes a lot of people to do that.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I mean, with that specific example, and based on what he just said, there was a lot of not just music in that. There was sound design too.
And-
that was
Yeah.
a part of the main. That was one of the first things that I noticed when it comes to sound and score is like, oh, there's more to it than this.
Mhm.
There is like
And Trent Reznor and Atticus Finch always get like all the Atticus Ross, right?
Yeah.
They always get all the praise and all that stuff, and I just feel like
Just slipped into To Kill a Mockingbird.
I know.
Yeah.
I was like, excuse me. But I was like, I don't know, like if that's something that you see as well, where it's like it's not just the composer, it's a lot more in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, every composer is different, but regardless of whether that composer is really into sound design or not, there is definitely a lot of the sound designer and the composer working together. Like,
Mhm.
I've worked on a lot of shows where, let's say something's happening to do with aliens or something. Obviously, sound design is going to be a lot of weird alien noises and synths. And so,
Bleeps and bloops.
yeah, exactly. And so if that's happening, the composer needs to know, can I put music here that is then going to distract from those sounds? Or so you need to kind of work together to create one cohesive soundscape.
Yeah.
anytime I have a client at the get-go, I always tell them that if you really want this to be like, I need the music. Like when you're sending me delivery or you're sending me the files that I need, I would like the score in there because everything kind of goes back and forth. There was one project that you mentioned in my episode, Need Anything, where the composer actually contacted me and was like, hey, and that doesn't always happen with the freelance side of things. And so it's score can inform sound design, whereas vice versa, it can inform the other side because they might be,
Absolutely.
they could be possibly working against each other.
Mhm.
There could be times where it's like the old cliche of less is more. It's like, oh man, it's just muddying the screen, and it's just like I don't even know what's happening right there. You know what I mean? So it's like that is the soundscape of a movie. All of the things inform and congeal and create that
Yeah.
that experience.
Absolutely. And definitely something that you said on the previous episode that totally applies to me as well is dialogue is king.
Yeah.
Always. Even when temping, like you have to watch where the dialogue is, and that really informs every aspect of what you do musically.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, I think we kind of talked about it, but just kind of to break it down even more for anyone that potentially could be like, oh, it's really fascinating of sound editing or music editing. So, like, what do you think are like major pitfalls? We talked about temp love. What do you think are some of the major pitfalls with demoing?
I suppose every situation is very different as a music editor because some people want to receive quick times so that they can see the music with picture. Other situations, they want you to send the music and then the assistant editor, the picture editor, will then cut it in. So when demoing, it's very important if I'm delivering a quick time to mix the music properly. So a little bit of mixing, kind of like a light version of what you would do. I have to make sure it's never taking over the dialogue. It's never like the composer's intentions are being represented, but it's not like blasting and they're going to go, ooh, this sticks out too much.
Not too quiet either, that you're missing key parts
Exactly.
of the score.
Yeah, so it's very important to make sure nothing goes wrong in translation so that when they're giving their notes, it's just based on what does the composer need to do to fulfill what they're seeking rather than,
Sure.
the music editor, made this too loud and so I don't like it. So,
Yeah, because like there are some things that might fight with like the dialogue. There's even like certain sounds. Like I have a frequency chart on my wall, and it's like where the human voice usually lies, where violins usually are, and so it's like sometimes when mixing, it's like these two things just like almost sound the same,
right.
and it's
Yeah, it's like a light chart. You need like particular lumens and how much you're gonna put on your key and fill and stuff like that. That's interesting. I feel like I'm just so fascinated. I want you to kind of like just break down like the time frame and what it goes into, because I think at this point it's a post production.
Yeah.
So you're on deliveries, you're on deadlines, like, and you're always on this sliding scale, like you said. Sometimes in the demoing, you realize like, oh, we actually want this thing to happen right here, and you're like, okay, cool. Now we're back to temp. What would you say is kind of like the variable time differences between shows and films?
They're very different. With shows, it's usually a pretty quick turnaround. So it'll be like a total of 2 weeks to do all of the demoing for one episode.
And this is like an hour long or 30-minute?
For an hour long.
Okay.
Yeah. So 2 weeks to get the demoing done, but they overlap. So on that second week, you're finishing up the demoing of this episode and starting the demoing of the next episode. So it's very important to be fastidious with your notes and, making sure nothing gets lost in the shuffle.
Oof.
But that's actually, I prefer that over film just because I find that with film, you have a lot more time usually. Sometimes you don't, but
Right.
But you usually do. And
Theoretically, you should.
Exactly,
Yeah.
you should. But a film is more, at least in my experience, someone's baby. So like the most minute little detail is being scrutinized. And so something that could be fixed on the stage very easily because it's just an issue of like, oh, once we have stems, you can just get rid of this sound that you don't like. It's still going to go a full like getting back notes. The composer will redo it. It has to be perfect.
Because
Mhm.
timing is a thing too, like even down to frames. Like
Yeah.
sometimes where it's like, I'm just gonna throw out this phrase that I use. I don't know if it's
Fix
something
it
that
and
you
pray.
guys use.
Oh.
Frame fucking is a phrase that
I've heard
we-
you say that
Really?
multiple times.
Yeah. I mean, I think it applies. I don't know if I made this clear in my episode, but I mainly work in trailers. I have done a lot of film and whatnot, but every day I'm mainly working on trailers. So frames come down to it, and film hasn't as much, but there have been times where they're like, hey, can you move that over a frame? And I'm like, your mind literally can't tell the difference.
For sure. No, but I
Sometimes
also
you just want to
work-
give notes.
Yeah, for sure. No, that there's actually a story. I won't say the specific names, but a story that my boss has told me.
This paywall is getting higher and higher.
I'm sorry, yeah, it is.
This is like those online journals. Like I got to pay $5 to get the rest of the story. So, but no, please.
There's like a famous situation where a mixer was told to make a change like that, just like something that would be imperceptible, and accidentally hit play before making any changes, and was told, "Great, that fixed it."
My audio
Gotta love that
teachers-
though a little bit.
My
Yeah.
audio teachers used to say that there's a psychological thing that goes on during, you could make like even decibel, like 1 decibel, you're not really going to like turn that down a decibel and you're like, your hearing.
So
there is
won't
a
even be able
psychological
to-
thing about it. It's why you're
Right.
never supposed to ask like for feedback on something. As far as like, I mean, you are in a work environment like that. But let's say I made a pilot for something like that, and I'm just showing some friends. If you ask for feedback, they will find it.
well,
Yeah.
Even if they didn't have any, if you ask that specific question, the
Well,
brain goes,
I
"I want to
learned-
fulfill that need."
I learned to
Right.
send things, I just go, enjoy.
well, no, I
Yeah.
mean, and this is the thing. Corporate client oversight happens all the time, and people are going to ask really weird and dumb things. But one thing that I have learned for all those corporate client people who are listening to this stuff, a trick, especially if you are directing or all this stuff, and you do have a lot of answers, and a lot of people ask you questions of like, is this good? Is this confirmed? Is it ready to go? Ready for delivery? All this stuff. Saying stuff like that, like move it back a frame, go up a decibel, are really dumb shit to say. Like, change it can you change the value of the pink by 1? Like, no, say I want it more pink. I want it more loud. I
Mhm.
want it quieter. Don't pretend that you know what you're talking about in these things. Be just as direct as you can of what you want. And it's like, could you make the dialogue come out more? Could you make
Yeah, being
It
specific.
is why. Yeah, go ahead. sorry.
Because there are some times that Bonnie and I laugh when we get a note on something and they're like, they could have just said, can you make it more purple? We're dealing with audio. That's
Yeah.
very vague. Can
Yeah.
you be specific?
could you make it more triangle like?
Well,
It's
so
like,
one of
what?
the reasons I do like editing for Tom stuff is he has this really wonderful way of like communicating and saying what he wants, but it's also still collaborative in that sense. So it's not like, hey, can you turn this contrast up by like 50 points? It'd be like, I need more
I want more
contrast.
black.
I want more, yeah.
I want more black.
Yeah.
I want the shadows. I want this
And then I
noir.
go, okay, I'll do that in my way.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. So
Uh,
you find the jobs you like to work with.
You also just, I mean, you get moments like this where people just, like laugh about it behind, because it's like you're asking for things that like we know what you want, but you're using dumb language and you're trying to sound like you're a little bit more in the know than you should be. Like, let the professionals do what. It's like,
why you
oh,
hired
okay.
them.
It's like, oh, okay. What does that
Right.
mean for me? It's like that's part of your job is to translate that stuff, not for them to try to make a fake undecipherable cryptic.
Right, absolutely. And that's something that I definitely deal with a little bit as well, as kind of bringing together the people giving notes and the composer. Like, the
little
it
go
is-
between.
yeah, it's more helpful when they say what they want to feel from the music rather than like, maybe go to the third on that one or,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I gotta
like-
ask, just to bring it even a step further, when you get a project sent to you, what is your approach to working on that? Like, do you watch it through first? Do you start fiddling while you're watching it right away, or what's kind of your breakdown?
Yeah, definitely watch it first, and then after watching it through, going into the files that I've received, which will be an audio file for the dialogue, for the sound effects, and for the music, and then creating basically a spreadsheet that has all of the timings of where any bit of music is within the film or show.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually even includes things as dumb as like if a character goes like la 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 la, like I have to note that because if in the future, they get sued because that was a song written by,
Yeah.
it has to be notated. So I'll
Interesting.
get those notes done and then get that over to the composer. I mean, in temping, there's no composer to get it to,
Right.
but then go from there, just cue by cue.
Sweet. It's pretty straightforward. Because are there certain parts that you find you still really enjoy? Like for me with editing, like I really enjoy the putting the story together, and like I found that like I still I don't want to say I don't enjoy the other pieces, but really getting all those raw files and like going
Assembly.
through all the takes and assembling it all together is such a rush for me still that sometimes I'll be like, I gotta slow down, I gotta go do the dialogue and I gotta do the color. But
For sure.
there's still parts of that for you that seem to stick out.
Yeah, absolutely. Creatively, temping is definitely my favorite, but as far as just feeling satisfied in the like getting into the workflow and then looking at the clock and being like, oh, so many hours have passed,
Yeah.
but I'm just enjoying myself. That would be the building, preparing for delivery to the mixer. Once you get all the stems and just making sure everything is so neat and lined up exactly where it needs to be.
Hell
and
yeah.
It just feels good.
I love
yeah.
you.
Could you break that down a little bit of making it neat and keeping everything lined up? Because for someone like me who, doesn't want to hover over everyone's back and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, I literally say, these are my notes. Bye-bye. You're great. I'll see you in like a week. And then
Is it like making sure things are labeled?
that's it.
Like
So
all
like,
that
I want
stuff?
to like, what's everything in line in terms of, So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Labeling is key, partially just because of the delivery, which is the very end. You're going to be delivering this music. And so you want it to be that your spreadsheet, the names are exactly the same as the files themselves.
Okay.
And then all of your fades need to be identical and they're all based within frames. You want to stay in grid mode so that everything is, on this frame, the fade starts and then it gets to the first
Are you working
waveform.
in Pro Tools?
Yes, Pro Tools. To my knowledge, I mean, I'm sure some music editors could work in something else, but
I once worked on a project that the post guy worked in Logic, and I totally
Interesting.
was like, what?
yeah,
But it's possible. It has all of the tools. It has time code. It has
Right.
the ability to do video. It's possible. But Pro Tools has been such a
It's-
standard for
Mhm.
so long.
So
that
is
it's-
Avid.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know. Hey man.
Yeah.
Look,
Yeah.
you got it. Apple is not there yet.
I've transitioned to DaVinci
Yeah.
for all my
I
editing.
didn't-
I love DaVinci.
Oh yeah, we've talked about this.
Yeah,
Oh
it's-
my god, I love it so much.
Great
Anyway,
program.
Another episode.
I
DaVinci
mean,
are us. That's what we'll do.
that's a part of the process, and we didn't talk about it. Is like, and you mentioned it with being fastidious. I like that word. With
That's
your
like
notes,
a $5 word.
with notes and staying like this part of the process is really, really important to stay organized because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of you have to think ahead and what if, in a sense of like, what if this gets moved?
And
what
I
if this gets relabeled by accident? What if this
Mhm.
gets
Well-
so it's like, and you also, to speak to what you were saying about being like a ninja, like in terms of labeling, you want to make sure that the next person, whoever takes this over,
Yeah.
can open it and not even have any questions, so to speak.
And well,
Does that sound
Absolutely.
true?
It needs to be self-explanatory. It's multiple times when I've been working, as the assistant music editor with a music editor, there will be times when, he'll be handing something off to me that I've never looked at before.
Yeah.
And, tells me specifically, oh, you need to make this change. And then the only way that that's going to be physically possible is if everything is labeled properly and I can look at the notes and say, this
Somebody
is at
needs
this
to be
time
able to
code.
do like, hey, just take that, and you're like, cool, I
Yeah.
can do that.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
I mean, and I would ask, is this, would you say, like part of a craft of like, this is the sign of a good editor versus like, should this just be a normal thing? Right? Because it sounds like it's something that you guys keep, have to keep tabs on and be mindful of and be helpful in the process. But it also kind of sounds like not a lot of people, like there are maybe some editors that don't do this.
I feel like if they do, they're not going to work for very long. But a composer, for example, has less of a responsibility to do that kind of stuff. Like, it's always nice to work with a composer who's like scientific and everything's always labeled the same, but it's not a job requirement. I've had several projects where a composer, they're sending the first version of a cue, but it's labeled V7 just because one of the cues they worked on that day was V7. So today everything is V7. And so it was,
because when you're exporting, they might have accidentally not changed what was being exported.
Right.
And they just kind of like, oh, I'm just changing this part of the file name. And you're like, no, the rest of the file name matters.
right.
So it's like, I'm curious about like organization because I feel like I'm speaking a foreign language when I mention this to some people. Two pops.
I feel like I'm speaking 4 languages when I'm saying this to Tom.
No.
You're
It's
so close. I was like, oh man, could have been great.
Yeah. No. This is something that I'm very curious to get your point of view because this is something that I learned in audio school, and I do see it in my line of work. 2 pops. What a 2 pop is
Please.
is a usually 1K tone for 1 frame. You hear beep. I use it in our ad freeze.
A K-tone?
1 kilohertz. It's the frequency that it is.
Hey, this is Nerd
No,
Explained.
I
We gotta
realize.
go.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
I realize that I'm using lingo.
And
It's
everyone,
just
No, I'm just kidding.
words.
and everyone
We're truly
listening,
lost.
everyone listening, I'm not asking for you. I'm an idiot. So I'm asking for myself.
So a 2 pop is at usually it's at 58 frames before the 1 minute mark or 58 seconds. It's just 2 seconds before the thing starts.
Yeah.
And it allows for post-production, it allows that is your reference point for the front. And anything after that, and it lands to a 2 marker. You've seen it in movies.
Yeah.
You've seen a 2 come up on the screen and it's kind
1,
of left
boop.
in.
Yep.
Yeah. It allows for sync. And I'm wondering, does it play a lot in your realm?
oh yes, everything has the 2 pop, preferably at the start and at the end. Though I've noticed a pattern of less and less
At the end.
pops at the end for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't actually. I've a few projects I've had a 2 pop at the end, but
For sure. But yeah, that I mean, sync is so crucial in every step of the process. And in fact, in demoing, it's kind of like a 3-pronged approach where
Wait, there's a 3-prong in the 3-prong?
oh yeah,
Oh my god. How many
prongs
prongs?
within prongs
This is-
within prongs.
This is becoming very
This
echidna
is
like.
a 3-prong cubed.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. Speaking of
Yes.
math.
So within the cubed part of the 3, the demo will have I'll output it with the time code embedded from Pro Tools, and then also put the time code in the file name in the labeling. And then also several seconds before the music starts, I'll grab just a little bit of the dialogue track and output that with the music so that no matter what, it will be in sync. Like if it's not spotting with the...
you have a note. There is no way
Yeah.
that this could be off.
Like,
If
exactly.
you line these up just down a square.
not my
So the audio
fault.
comes with it, so they know that like that's exactly where
What-
the dialogue.
What was the word?
Yeah, right.
Fastidious?
fastidious. I mean, it's
very fastidious.
because here's the thing. I mean, especially you'll hear it more with dialogue, oftentimes of like being not in sync.
Mhm.
You're seeing their mouth move, but the words are coming out. Maybe even with this, you do notice. You'll
Dialogue?
see like dialogue.
Dialogue you can super notice.
You can see like
Yeah.
I'm so mad right now because I'm trying to figure out my TV and my
Mhm.
stereo system, and there's a little bit of a sync issue, and I'm like,
That's the worst.
where's it going on? What's happening? Is it the smoothing? Anyway, you can notice it because the human eye is looking at the mouth and they're listening and things aren't lining up. So with music, you don't always, but
Right.
sometimes the composer, the designer or whatever will have something lined up on a certain layer. They're like, no, this note needs to land on this word.
Looking at you, Christopher Nolan.
I mean, I kind of want to. I feel like we've talked so much, and I love like all the very kind of nuts and bolts about the stuff. But I kind of want to take your personal philosophies about things, and also like some of your takes on some films and stuff like that. Because you talked exactly
Sure.
like some things have to hit on certain points. And for some reason, Dune's really on my mind. But also, just let's pull back from Dune.
For some reason.
That paywall.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's one fun story, and I want to hear your take on it.
Okay.
Where, you know, I know you love the DC extended universe.
Oh, love it.
I know, and you think it's cinema.
Mhm.
Batman versus
I feel
Superman.
like he's maybe being facetious a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not being fastidious. I'm being facetious.
Okay, gotcha.
Very facetious. There's a moment where Hans Zimmer was like, I don't know. It says Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL both composed the film, and there's a moment that Hans Zimmer's like, I don't know when to put in the Wonder Woman track. You know, she's gonna fight. There's gonna be a moment, but I have no good point to have it in. And then Junkie XL, this is the anecdote from both of them that he said, just put it right here when she lands. And to your point of, you know, making everything, you know, crisp and nice, and then also having things hit on a certain point.
Mhm.
Do you think those are like some decisions that are treated, you know, obviously it comes down to the court of public opinion, right? Of like, do audiences resonate with that stuff? But, you know, to your expertise is like just dropping a song right then and there. Like, how many times has that happened, or what are your thoughts on
It's
that?
got to be a little situational, but yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely it's situational. It depends on the tone of the project. It also depends on the music. Like, is it a needle drop, which is like, you know, a song that's going to be playing
Popular
and-
song, yeah.
right?
Edgar
and-
Wright.
for sure.
Yeah.
And if it's like source, meaning diegetic, like in the world of the film, like
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I feel like I've said diegetic and non-diegetic so many times, and I'm like, no one says that.
yeah,
No, they do. They do.
I've had to say it too much on a project that I've recently been working on, which was the most diegetic music in anything I've ever worked on by far.
Was it a Terrence Malick film?
Can we, because we're
We're
saying
explaining.
words.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So yeah, diegetic is. How about you explain?
Oh,
you
yeah.
are the expertise, please.
Diegetic means that it exists within the universe on screen. So if there's someone's, you know, phone rings and you're hearing that,
Or radio.
that's
Using
the radio. If they're at a club, you know, things like that, there's not much room for creativity. It's the moment you're inside the club, you're hearing the music on that frame.
Right.
Lars von Trier, he abides by this rule called the Dogma 99. And so some of his films apply to that. And he says, like, this is the rules. You can't use any special effects. Everything has to be in camera. You could do coloring and all that stuff, even that would be considered a special effect. But you have to use all diegetic stuff. And so, like, that's a restriction. I think Nymphomaniac is one of those where, like, there's no score.
None, yeah.
There's
Right.
just only radio. There's only the car and the train and all that stuff. So
No Country for Old Men, I
Mhm.
believe, as well.
I
No
believe-
score.
Ah.
So it's interesting to, again, define cool films that, you know, abide by that restriction. But anyways, so
Yeah.
tone,
Well,
decision,
then
non-diegetic is score.
just to finish off
Yeah.
that conversation since we asked the question.
Yeah, like Star Wars, that's all non-diegetic. That's yeah. Doesn't
It's not
exist.
coming out of the Millennium Falcon's radio.
Exactly.
Like the Tauntaun didn't really cry.
The characters within the movie are not hearing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Man.
And needle drop refers to like a popular song of the day.
Yeah.
Is that
Right,
kind of
yeah,
an
it's,
easy-
We did
would-
say
It
that.
would be a subgenre of non-diegetic, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my understanding is just that it's any like song that would be on an album that
Mhm.
it's needle drop because it's like a vinyl record that you're dropping a
So like
needle onto.
Creedence Clearwater, anytime there's a
Well, no, that's so like character walks into club, the club music starts emanating from the club, right?
that's one way of doing it.
So that would be technically source.
I mean, yeah, it can flip flop like in the first episode of the new season of Dexter, for example. That opens with a needle drop where Dexter isn't hearing this music. I think it's an Iggy Pop song, but then it eventually gets to he's in his car and then he is hearing it. So it is a needle drop, but it flip flops from non-diegetic
transitions
to
into-
diegetic.
Yeah, I was gonna say because non-diegetic could also encompass score and popular music. Well, the needle drop is typically a song.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Just means it's a song.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Correct.
That's back in the day when we used to get CDs for movies. I loved that you used to have OSTs, original soundtracks,
Mhm.
and then you'd have the movie album.
Yeah.
And you'd have,
Yeah.
these are all the songs.
So it's like,
in the
well,
movie.
American Graffiti is only needle drops.
Mhm. Shout out to George Lucas, baby. So, I mean, I kind of want to hear a little bit, some takes, if you're comfortable.
All right.
With some films, particularly of like, I think, yeah, I was like, we talked a little bit before we started the episode. And I was like, but I want to hear like, we had
Tom really wants to get past this paywall.
Yeah.
And even he came in and was like,
I'm not doing this.
I'm not going to do this, and this.
So the one,
Tom's like,
the one film
Yeah.
that I mentioned before, because I think you mentioned it on a social media thing. I was just like, that's a very interesting take, and I think it's very cool that people who are interested in film get to hear like that. There's a YouTube series of like VFX creators react to VFX.
Shout out to Quarter Crew. Nick Laurent, shout out.
And there's
my
like
buddy.
chefs reacting to chef movies and stuff like that. So like, I mentioned the Joker film. And the steps and all that stuff, and I kind of wanted to hear a little bit of your takes, but other things like that. If we don't want to do that, we could go step on other things of like, that was good, that was bad, I would have done something different. Like, what does it mean of like, there's,
Or why did it stand out?
Yeah,
For sure. I would prefer to just I'll focus on things that I really do like,
Yes, please.
rather than rag on anything. Because at the end of the day, if it's unless it's something that's just a mistake, technically, it is all just a subjective like.
We weren't there. We don't know how it went down.
Exactly.
Or it's a taste thing that we don't agree with.
Exactly. It might be the intended choice, just
Right.
not something I agree with.
And I think there's part of it where the conversation where you're like, I can definitely imagine where there was an editor that was doing this, and then someone's just like, you got to put it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that kind of relating to the discussing of needle drops. I guess I'll try not. I won't spoil anything, but in the premiere of the new season of Dexter,
Okay.
they do something with the music that I have not seen before. I'm sure it exists, but I thought it was a really creative decision where it was a lot of needle drops, just like needle drop, needle drop, needle drop. And I was like, what the heck is this? Are they going in like a new direction for the show or something?
CW, baby.
But then it became clear, wait a minute. Is this like
Part of the
being used for
storytelling?
storytelling? Yeah.
Interesting.
And then at some point, score does come in, and it's at a very specific moment.
I
that
watched
means
it,
a
and
lot.
I know what you're. Yeah.
And I thought it was a beautiful choice, just really
That's pretty
fun.
cool. So
So
they
it-
kind of snuck it in, and then you're like, damn.
in that
was-
in that sense, it's kind of like a silent moment, and then you don't notice the score's not there, and then here it's like needle drop, needle drop, needle drop. It's like, and then you finally are made so clear where it's like, I haven't heard a score yet. And then
Exactly.
finally we hear like, this is the theme. Now we are in.
Exactly. It's like,
I'm
there was a
watching
reason.
Dexter.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a great choice. Which isn't, so much the music editing, but that is, the way they
Well, I
chose
think
to
it's
use
part and
music.
parcel.
Yeah, for sure. It's in the same world.
And would you say that's a writing thing, or how does that translate? Let's imagine if you had this job, how would it have gotten to you?
I think that's the kind of decision that gets made in what's called a spotting session, which is a big part of being a music editor. It's where there's several spotting sessions that occur. There's one for the temp. There's one for the after the temp. It's where you all get together and watch the film or the TV show and make all the decisions about the intention of the music. Like, I think we should have music here because it will make us feel this, I think this should be needle drops. And what if we just did only needle drops and then at this moment had the score come in? Like,
So it's kind of a big think group where you're all
Yeah.
throwing ideas at the wall and seeing
exactly.
So
brainstorm session.
Mhm.
That's cool. I really dig that.
Spotting
actually.
happens I've heard it on sound design, even mixing. Like there's a spotting session to watch it, and you're like,
sounds like you just ran a mile.
That's a real Tom moment for you.
That's good.
We have so many clips of Tom doing something, and all of us going, bah, 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 bah.
Well, no, it's like the final.
Yeah, finale. That's cool. I did that kind of session got me really excited. Those are the kind of things I like in these creative processes. Is that session where everyone gets in a room and just starts like throwing shit out there and seeing what sticks. And like there are no bad ideas in that sense of like,
Right.
let's hear it all. Let's lay everything on the table. And it's really cool that that's part of that job. It's not because I've been on certain. Obviously, I've never done anything to the caliber of what the three of you have done. But in the smaller projects that I've done, sometimes as the editor, you just kind of get locked in a room and they go, "Great, thanks," and then that's it. So it's cool to hear that there's the opportunities to put in that also creative input because
Absolutely.
we're in a creative field. That's why
Right.
we're all doing this. We're
Exactly.
all creative folks, and want to share these ideas that we think would better the project, collaborate and work with people. So I like the spotting session thing. That really stuck with me. That's a silly thing, but it got me.
No, it is, and it's also one of the the biggest probably opportunity to be creative for the music editor, at least, because from that point, musical decisions, the composer is God. Like,
right.
You can talk to the composer and give an opinion and be like, oh, I kind of wonder about this, but you never say like, I think you should do this, because that's way overstepping your rights.
Whoa, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. No, not okay.
Gotcha.
There's part of me that feels like there's definitely people who do that though.
I've seen one time a picture editor say to the composer, I really like the chord you use in this other cue with the blah, blah, blah interval. He's like, I think maybe it's an 11th or something. Maybe use that here. And everyone was just like, oh, no, he didn't just say that. Like, yeah.
That's like responding K on a long text. Like, K. Bye.
Yeah, for sure.
You're grave.
That's what I love doing that.
So what more? More.
What more?
Well, it's just very fascinating. I liked hearing kind of like, we talked a little bit beforehand. And it was just like, oh, that's just, it's this. When you see it's like done very simply, then you can have an opinion in how that comes out. But again, I want to hear more of like things that really, inspired you, or go like, oh yeah.
Or let me phrase it this way, in a way of like, just to build on that. Also, if there are people who are interested in this kind of field, what are the things they should look out for, like that stick out to you, that have intrigued you?
Look out for as far as what they should do to
just
get
to start,
into it? Or?
Gathering knowledge and like what kind of stuff
like
is stuck
that's a
out
good
to you?
at it. That's a good.
Right. Yeah. I think that watching movies and TV is a really good thing. And also listening to music that is lauded for its production, understanding, kind of what makes music work and what makes television work, and then kind of bringing it together. I don't know. It's kind of
it's tough. Yeah.
It's an ephemeral kind of thing where you just like, this feels good or it doesn't feel good.
Right. That's why you're honing your tastes, right? You find the things that, like what Tom said with like directing and screenwriting with Carly, is like, find the things that speak to you and kind of break them down and figure out, well, okay, why
Precisely.
do I like this thing?
Yeah. And I'd say it's not about like music theory, for example, because, that's like a composer's world. But for a music editor, it's not about knowing, so much like, oh, this is the correct way to go from like this interval to that. It's more about like, what emotion do I feel from what specific implementations of, yeah, exactly. More about the feeling than about the specific technical aspects of music or of film.
Dig it.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I think there's something to it as well, where like just getting into like the craft of it, like when, again, I don't know all the terms, but I feel like there is definitely some definite artistry that's like, when do you do this or that? Like, what makes you different than another music editor? And I feel like there's that moments and that stuff. And I don't know if there's a way to talk about that without spoiling some secret sauce and some special ingredients that you might have at your disposal. But I feel like there warrants some conversation around that.
Yeah, I suppose for me specifically, I would say that my approach, which is heavily influenced by the lessons I learned in electronic music production, that kind of gives me my own special, like, I'll answer certain notes using things that I would have done when producing an EDM song, like different little tricks with pitching or stretching time. Not on the composer's music. Definitely not for that. But
No. We
It's a golden rule.
Yeah, you don't mess with the composer's music in that way. But yeah, definitely in temping, I would say that's where I have kind of a more unique approach, where I'm not so much just utilizing existing score, but also like layering things on top of each other, putting in a filter that just takes like the mids from a loop of violins, and then kind of like playing around with a comb filter and letting it in a little bit and out a little bit, just to give like a little bit more feeling to it.
Is there anything that you do that, like something in the process that every time you get to do it, you're like, ooh, this is like, I love reverb tails. They're so easy, but sometimes when you can get a good one, you're like, oh, hell yeah. This
Absolutely.
is gonna sound dope.
No, yeah, definitely. That's, I do plenty of that. Like, there's a lot of times where you'll need to make a transition that just feels wonky, and being able to pull it off with, just the simplest of tools so that it's not ruining anything. Like for example, using a reverb tail at the end of some phrase, and then sneaking in the incoming cue and finding a way to make it feel organic. That always feels great, just because it's like that would have sounded terrible if I had not spent the time
And
to
you
work
look
on
around
that.
and you're like, oh, I'm by myself.
For sure. Yeah. That is the life of an editor a lot of the time.
So typically, you said in the process of TV and film, it typically takes like 2 weeks for the temping and the demoing for TV. How much collaboration or what time frame is it that you typically meet, like Josh? So like when it comes down to the mixing and delivering.
Yeah, it all kind of comes to a head once all the music is final, and then the composer sends their music to a mixer to get it out into stems, and then from there I build it all. And then send it over to someone like Josh. And
Hi, Josh.
And then from there, I go to the stage, the mixing stage, and sort of just make sure that the composer's intentions are being properly represented whenever there's a question about how something needs to be mixed. And also there's just stage fixes that need to happen where like, oh, we need to find something to make this feel a little bigger, and then you go looking through all the stems and like, oh, there's a little riser here. I'll throw that in, send it over to Josh, and then he puts it in. And that takes like a week.
Okay.
It can go longer.
Fast.
And then another week for them to do the printing, get the print master ready to go. At which point that's delivered to me. And then I get all the precise timings of what is in the final product. Like, because that's money. So it's this song was here for this many seconds. So someone gets paid this much money. Then I do the very fun part of going through and noting who's getting paid and who their publisher is for
Shout
every
to Taylor
music.
Swift, baby.
Yeah.
And that's then input that into Disney's or whoever's database so that people
Sweet.
get their money.
It's very nice of you.
Yeah.
Well, I do what I can.
And then I guess lastly, kind of just rounding it all out, what would be kind of some of your like dream projects? I feel like Jay and Silent Bob Reboot's pretty awesome.
It was a lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah.
And I felt good about doing something that I, recognize, which for me, the biggest kind of thing that I have wanted to do for a little while would be a Star Trek of some kind. I'm a big Trekkie. I would love to do.
It would take you a few minutes to get prepped before you dug into that session. You'd be like, I mixed.
exactly.
I mentioned in my episode when I got to mix the international trailer for Halloween Kills.
For
and
sure.
they told me what I was doing, and I was like, international trailer isn't like the main trailer, but it's getting close.
Mhm.
And I'm like, cool.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I got this.
Yeah,
You guys don't even worry.
I got to mix something for pretty large thing for a Marvel thing. And I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, I got it.
And then you hang up and then pass.
Do you
out.
have new pants, please?
You're going to have to delete this once you're done.
Wow.
Cool. Sweet.
Yep.
And just like I guess piggybacking off that, with Star Trek, do you notice any particular edits or good awesome cues that you've seen from season to season? I feel like you could definitely see each different actors, different performances, different sets, different ships, different storytelling, different. So you could see like each part
What
of
else
that.
is different?
I want to see in terms of the music, the writing, the lighting, the budget.
Yeah.
The crew.
Yeah. So like that kind of stuff. Like what I'm just like very fascinated. For like, oh, what do you hear? What do you see?
What do your elf eyes see?
I mean, there's definitely a big change from like the older series like Star Trek Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, even Enterprise, where that was a lot more old school television,
Mhm.
less like, because modern TV is almost kind of filmic
Yeah.
Right.
nowadays. Like, but I really like the music in Picard in particular. There's some things that Jeff Russo, the composer, did with tying multiple pieces of different themes together.
Ooh.
That really just kind of made it feel like a cohesive part of the show, which, you probably wouldn't notice if you're not trying to. But
It's in your
What you
wheelhouse.
do.
You definitely do. And
For sure.
that's the thing. Like you're changed forever, and that's why I'm like, I want to know what you like. For me, like we talked about an episode a while ago of like I notice like visual things sometimes, and I'm just like, I'm kind of cursed in that way where it's like I just see it where it's like I know what's happening. I see where the camera's going.
I was watching Midnight Mass on Netflix a little bit ago, and it's horrible because Bonnie works in the industry too, and we'll pause something and we'll be like, "Oh, that was a bell suck. Oh, good bell suck. Remember that." Or you're like, "Oh, that was a good. Oh, they probably did that for the. Remember that.
What's a bell suck?
Oh, it's a bell, and then it's a reverse bell. Like if you took the bell sound, you hear a bell, reverse it.
You'll hear it in music a lot with cymbals.
Mhm.
A lot of people like to do a crash cymbal, then reverse it so that it builds and then whoosh.
Yeah.
Because there's an initial hit of something.
I just realized I'm the only non-music person in this room. So I'm like,
Sorry.
no, it's totally fine. But that's the thing where it's like, I think what we're doing here in this show allows audience members like me who are just like, I don't know anything about music, but then all you guys have a lingua franca. You guys are able to talk about things. And I think that allows for like a cooler, concentrated discourse. And then you have someone like me who's like, what are you talking about?
I'm sure that you get this sometimes too when you realize that you're speaking with somebody that's not a music editor or not somebody that works in post, and you're like,
Hi.
like we just did on the episode where it's like, I'm sorry, diegetic? Where it's like,
For sure.
And you're like, I'm sorry, I made it sound cool.
Yeah. It's just the lingo. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's an actual phrase and stuff like that. And so, I mean, like when we, I think even to a more layman standpoint, it's like when you say the frame, they're like, what? So in every second, there's 24 frames. Unless it's shooting on 30, then, like 30 frames per second. And then we do super slow-mos, you have 60 and up. So it's like those things that people are like, oh, I didn't realize. And I don't want to discount the intelligence of our audience, but like those are just some things that you never realize. Like a bell suck. I'm like, what? And then some audience members are like, Tom's an idiot. I'm like, I am. So it's like, I want to know these things.
I forget that it's
A mise en scène. Tom.
it's not even like,
Mise en scene's important. And I'm glad that you said the word filmic because I have brought that to our other show, Capes Crusaders, and they're like, what the filmic? I'm like, it's a real word, guys.
Yeah.
Guys. I am the film, and that was my nickname, the filmic.
The filmic. Amazing.
But you were saying, Josh, I'm so sorry.
oh, I was just like I just forget that there are some, with anything, with music, with editing, with even in retail or whatever, you realize that you learn these words and you're just using them in every day. And then you're like, oh, that's lingo. I forget that I'm learning now. They're quick phrases because we can be like, oh yeah, frame, do the thing and whatever. But like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Remember it every time I talk to my grandma and I go copy paste and she goes, what? And I go,
Yeah.
that's right.
Command C,
You right.
Command V.
Yeah. What's command? Anyway,
It's there to mess with the
Well,
PC users.
thank you so much for coming by today, man. This
My
was
pleasure.
awesome. This
Yeah.
was great to dig into that.
I hope you didn't hate it.
No, it's quite nice. Yeah.
It's quite nice.
And I want to ask, because we've had this kind of thing where with all of us, we didn't feel like we actually talked about as much as we could have. Where do you feel?
I agree. Yeah. I'm like, I didn't touch on that, and I didn't touch on the. But
What was
So
it like?
part 2.
oh my god.
90% untouched?
Maybe less than 90. But
Okay. Hey,
87.
89.
I think we're getting
You had
better.
the better joke.
We're getting better. I think before you were like 90% that didn't get touched, right?
Yeah. Like
Same.
there's so. I mean,
I feel like
'cause
100% of mine hasn't gotten touched yet.
Yeah.
We haven't.
At the point of this recording.
We haven't recorded mine yet.
I mean, the thing is that there's so much. The word got thrown about in Carly's episode, nuance. There's a lot of things that go into it, and it's like we could focus probably on one of the prongs and get a full episode of your thing, and get
That's what I want.
and good examples and stuff like that. Like, and for me, it's like, well, I could talk about this and the actual like stems. We could talk about stems.
Yeah.
What is STEM for the audience?
Oh yeah.
we forgot to say, what it's the individual tracks. Like, if you have a band, then there's the guitar. That by itself is one stem. The drums by itself is another stem.
And why is
And
it
here's
called
the thing,
stem?
Is the stem is it's everything on one. So like, if you record
Like
drums,
a tree branch?
yeah.
Like I'm on one?
If like when you record drums, there's a lot of microphones, all mic'd, and a stem is all of that down into one track. So it's like you'll have a sound effects stem. Sound effects, there might be upwards of 60 to 100 sound effects tracks sometimes. Music, I mean, I've worked on a trailer that had 80 music tracks because it's all of the violins and the drums stacked and
Flutes.
flutes,
Saxophones.
yeah, ukulele,
Timpani drums.
exactly.
I'm just going to keep naming until you stop me.
I've
get to
seen it.
80.
Yeah.
So Transformers.
So it's all down into one track. So it's like a movie. A movie could be just you have a dialogue stem, sound effect stem, and even that could be there could be a background stem, which is like you hear the park,
Birds.
you birds and background and
Water.
Each stem
Cars.
is a little world of their own.
yeah,
Because with
kind
all the
of.
drums. Because you're saying sound effects stem.
You got him.
Hey, look, I'm trying. I was never good at school. Because you're saying sound effects. And
It's more of a thing that I could show visually.
Yeah.
Like it's really like I could show you. I could open up a session and show you like that is the sound effects stem, and I wish, man, that's a really good like exercise.
So everything in the frame, Tom. There's
Thank you.
foreground. There's a background.
That's
everything
called
has
literally meso song. Literally the meso
Well-
song. Everything in the frame.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's just like it's important to appreciate the creatives that go into the things that we enjoy and the things that we watch because
They're magicians.
They're magicians. They're focusing on that thing that they do
Right.
and they do it really well. And
I appreciate you, Will.
really good at that.
Thank you.
I appreciate you and
This is
Josh
awesome.
because you guys work together.
We'll all make
We haven't
something
worked
someday.
One
together
day.
yet.
Have you guys
It would
not?
be nice.
No, we haven't.
We'll
I
make-
feel like
let's-
we get each other because I think we're both really organized people. That'd be like,
Yeah.
cool, got it.
Yeah,
You
it would,
guys
it
can
would
deal
go
with
well, I
me.
think.
Just give it to you like here you go.
Here
There's
you-
the
Well, everybody at home, thank you so much for watching. Feel free to send any questions over to us, and we'll send them to Will and answer them on future Nerds Explained.
yeah.
Reach out in the Discord. We love answering questions over there. Remember that we also have our other weekly show, the Nerd On Updates. That can always be an extension sometimes if you want to submit questions.
Please
Nerd
do. God, do not test me on this.
nerdon.tv/questions. You can submit questions there for the Nerd On Updates. All of the stuff, all of the things that we throw out, linky links, nerdon.tv has all of those links there. You can find everywhere that we are. We're on everywhere podcasts can be heard. We're there. But our website is the greatest place that you can go to that has all of that information in one place. So check it out. Do share us with your friends and family. That is how we legitimately grow. Consider joining that Nerd On Nation. It does allow us to upgrade our content and keep doing this as much as we do, and just to keep doing it for as long as we have. So, yeah, we appreciate you listening. Thank you, Will, for joining
Yeah,
us.
My
this was
pleasure.
awesome.
Thanks for
Always
having me.
great
Bringing
having you
your
on the show,
knowledge.
man.
But that's it.
Do you have anything to plug?
Oh, yeah.
No, just yeah, keep
So
keep
wha-
music editors employed. Keep watching TV.
and watch that Dexter.
Yeah, watch Dexter. It's good.
Yeah, it's good. But that's it. You know the drill. As always,
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.